What's going on, family? This is Derek L. McRae. That's right. I'm coming to you today with a new podcast. I'm excited about today's discussion. What I need you to do is I need you to get everybody you know connected, because we're about to dive into some stuff. It ain't no telling what I'm going to say, how I'm going to say it, but know that at the end of the day, it's going to be something that hopefully will benefit all of us. So I want you to go ahead, get your family, your friends, tell everybody to jump in, because we got a lot to say, a little time to say it. It's the podcast. That's right. Unscripted. What's going on, good people? Listen, it's another day. I'm really excited for real because, listen, my Dallas Cowboys showed up. They're defeating the odds, teaching everybody in the world that regardless of how you feel about them, they are a much improved team this year. Hats off to the entire coaching staff, to my boy Dak Prescott coming back doing some great things. We pulled out a nail biter last week, won it right as the clock wound down. We kicked a field goal and we lifted those hands and said victory. Yep, so that was one reason why I was excited. I was equally excited because on Saturday, one of my least most favorite teams in all the earth, that's with the F, all the earth, the University of Florida, those Gainesville Gators. I'm so happy. They lost a nail biter as well to Alabama. Hey, roll tide, don't like them either, but I'll like them this weekend because they beat up on University of Florida. Hey, my team, Florida State Seminoles, I already know it. You ain't got to say it for me. I'll say it for myself. We suck. It's time to talk a new coach all over again. Never should have got this coach we got right now anyway. But hey, let's jump into something even more exciting. I want to talk about a great friend of mine. Yeah, that's right. She is a phenomenal mom. She is a great wife. She's also a phenomenal church member. I don't pastor her personally, but my friend pastors her, and he tells me all of these great experiences about none other than our Congresswoman, Val Demings. That's right. Val Demings is a phenomenal woman. You talk about trendsetter. Man, listen, this young lady here has literally grown up through the ranks. She went to Florida State University in Tallahassee, Florida. That's right, go Noles. But not only that, but we also find that Val Demings has always been a trendsetter. Started out at OPD, that's Orlando Police Department, rose to become police chief, the first African-American female in Orlando, the first African-American female in Orlando to become police chief. She rose to those ranks to become police chief. And was her career done then? Absolutely not. She went on to also become the one and only, our very own 10th congressional leader. She's the representative for the 10th congressional district here in Florida. And we're talking about she's doing a phenomenal job. We've seen so much happen since she has been in Congress. We are talking about also Nancy Pelosi elected her or selected her also to be in 2020 to be a part of the impeachment program as well, where she was one of the captains. We saw her standing there looking fierce, looking strong and confident, and literally stating her case of why our old president, I won't say that number, but that old president should have been impeached. And so we want to tilt our hat to her today. She is the first lady of Orange County. That's right. She's married to none other than Mayor Jerry Demings, who's also doing a phenomenal job for our county. But she's a mother of 3 young boys. All 3 boys went to Florida A&M University. Man, you got to know that she's doing something right. Them boys went to FAMU. She's doing something right. And so I want to say today, we want to honor Val Demings. She's running for Senate, y'all. She's running for Senate. I ain't telling y'all who to vote for. Yes, I am. Go ahead and put them selections out there. This ain't Pastor Derek. This is Derek McRae. This ain't Bishop Derek. This is Derek McRae. So I'm telling you all, listen, she's running for Senate. She's running for the Senate against Marco Rubio here in the state of Florida. Man, let's go ahead and push her over the finish line. Matter of fact, if you can, send her a donation or something. Look out for the campaign. Make sure that you help her get over the finish line, because I believe that she qualifies. I believe she'll be a great candidate. And today, Val Demings, Valdez, that's her real name, Valdez Demings. Val Demings, we are celebrating you today, and we want to say, keep doing what you're doing. We got your back. So let's jump into today's talk, man. Listen, I remember a little while ago. Today we're talking about committed to commitment. Committed to commitment. And when I began to think about the theme and the topic today, it took me back to 1998, 1999, right around that time. I was a youth pastor at my home church. My actual pastor that I had, he had passed, And then we had gotten a new pastor who had come in, who was doing a great job for the church as well. And I was there and I was serving as a youth pastor. And I remember serving as a youth pastor, very, very strong. And then it just came to the place that my time had expired at the location in which I was still serving. I'm going to say that again. My time had expired. I was present in the facility. I was still consistent in the ministry, but I was no longer effective for what I was called to be or assigned to be. And so here I am serving in this church, and I'm really serving in this church, not because of the fact that it's so much where God wanted me to be anymore, as much as I was serving because it was what was familiar. It was what I was raised in. My entire family was going to this church still. We got from my aunt directing the choirs to me and my cousins being the drummers to my uncle who had built this church up. And literally, when I say built it up, I'm talking about construction, built the church up. And he was also the expediter. That's a nice way of saying the person who raised the offerings on Sunday mornings. To the rest of my family being ministers in the church mothers in the church. The head of the ushers in the church was my Uncle Jimmy. So much was going on in the church that was familiar to me. But it was time for me to make a move. How did I know it was time to make a move? Not because I didn't love my church anymore. Not because I didn't feel that my church could use me anymore. It was time to leave the church because, number one, it was no longer a peaceful place for me. It wasn't peaceful for me because of the fact that my spirit was troubled by a lot of different things. Not no scandals, not none of those kind of things. It was just troubled because of the fact that it was time for Derek to move on. The second thing that I knew that it was time to leave the church is because of the fact that it no longer was profitable for me. It no longer satisfied the work that was within me. And so because it no longer satisfied it, and when I say profitable, I don't mean financially, because when you really understand your worth, you also understand that everything ain't about your dollars. It was not profitable to me because of the fact that it really did not match up or feed into my gifts, my talents, and my settings. So it was really uncomfortable for me. But the third reason why I knew that it was time for me to move on is because of the fact that it was no longer promising. I saw nothing in the future. I saw no potentials of anything getting better. I just saw myself almost at a dead end. And after evaluating my situation and my circumstances, not making erratic movements or sporadic opportunities of just jumping to the next greatest thing that's out there. No, because when you understand your worth, you don't always have to just jump. You really take time out to evaluate the process of what you're dealing with so that you make your decisions based upon what you think is most profitable for the future. Because I live by this standard. I believe that before you make one step, you should take time out to think about your next 3 steps. Before you do anything, think about what's next, what happens after that, and what happens after that. And so after I began to process everything, I said, you know what? My commitment is strong, and I had to get over that because sometimes our greatest challenge is our inner fight of making sure that we appear to be loyal. But I had to gather that. I had to get over that. I finally got to the place of understanding I've done all I could do. I've deposited all I could deposit. And my journey at this location was over. And after that, I made a selection. I moved to a different church that was totally different than what I was used to. But it was where God had me to be. And I found that God profited me. He succeeded me where I was because I was willing to walk into what he had called me to be. Today, I want to talk a little bit about committed to commitment. Let's talk about it because all month long we've been dealing with relationships. So let's talk about commitment from the standpoint of relationships. All of us have met somebody, and when we met somebody, man, we're talking about that person where our heartbeat skips, and where it was just so exciting. The newness of the relationship, it literally began to pique interest for us. We were such the focal point. Our eyes was bubbling up every time we saw that person. When we thought about talking to that person on the phone, you know how y'all did it. You know, hey, you sleeping? Nah. You sleeping? Nah. But next thing you hear somebody snoring. You stayed on the phone because of the fact that you were so dedicated to the person. You started looking forward every day to seeing the person because you wanted to see that amazing smile. You wanted to feel the energy of that person because seeing that person and feeling that person made you feel special. All of us have been there at some point in time. It's called love. But then something happens. The longer you went on, the more you became acquainted with the other individual. this thing called time began to diminish this thing called affection. This thing called time. And what the older folks taught us was this. They taught us that the honeymoon was over. And for years, I was trying to figure out what you're talking about. The honeymoon is over. What they were really talking about was the fact that now routines have set in. Life really has come full circle. And now you're no longer on the market and they're not trying to sell to you to purchase you. Now they're saying, you got the product. This is the real me now. This is who I am. Because every couple puts forth their best foot first. So what do you do when now the thrill is slightly gone? What do you do now when things have slightly diminished? What do you do now? Because what you don't want to be is a person who looks to be fickle. You want to be committed. You want to be in this relationship. You want to make it work. And the truth is that sometimes what we're in is not meant for who we are. I'm going to say that again. Sometimes what we're in is not meant for who we are. Everybody gets overwhelmed with love. And that's something that I battle with a lot. I battle with this theory. Do we marry for love or do we marry for commitment? Do we jump into this thing for love? Because what I have discovered is that love is something that you feel real strong about at times, but then it's something that you feel real negative about at times. And so when we understand this and we understand how solid marriage is, I like to say we should not marry for love because love tends to be emotional based. We should marry for commitment. What do you mean by that, Derek? I'm saying to you that when you grab somebody, when you find somebody, when you look at somebody that you want to be with, you got to first put out a little laundry list to decide, is this going to be worth it after my feelings have diminished? After the honeymoon is over, after the sun has set, after we're back into our routines, after the wedding gown is gone, after the tuxedos have been returned, question is this somebody I can be with forever? Because sometimes when we learn the other side of individuals, man, it changes the perspective of what we see about our future with the individual. And a lot of us allow ourselves to fall into these places where now it's so uncomfortable. And you now start living in this season called regret. Season of regret is something serious. I want you to be encouraged to know this. I believe in commitment and I think you should be committed. But I want you to understand that when things really are not to the way that you expected them to be, you really got to take a self-evaluation to figure out, do I deserve what I am in? Now, that's a whole conversation all by itself. Do I deserve what I am in? Now, this may be in the form of a love relationship. It may be in the form of a friendship. It may be in the form of even a church partnership. Do I deserve what I'm in? Because I want you to understand that it's never too late. It's never too late. And this is something that all of us have to come to grips with. It's never too late for you to reevaluate your worth. It's never too late for you to reevaluate your worth. You got to understand that you deserve respect. You deserve happiness. And watch this. You have to make sure that you begin to encourage yourself so that you can move forward. As long as, and here it is, here's an adult conversation. As long as there aren't any legal things in this, I'm talking to all you daters right now. I'm not talking to your married folks right now. But as long as there is no legalities involved and i.e. no children involved, man, you get to jump ship and make the best decisions for yourself. Now, when you get into marriage and when you get into kids, it complicates things a lot more. And so I'm not on here to push divorce. But I am on him to push self-awareness that you got to make sure that what you're committed to is actually also committed to you. It's a painful thing to be in a relationship. And as you're in this relationship, you're trying to figure out how to make things work. But you're the only person working on how to make things work. Sometimes it's a hard pill to swallow to recognize that you're the only one that still wants this. And sometimes we're stuck in situations where the other person don't want to be with us anymore. So what do? Can you force somebody to fall back in love with you? The answer is absolutely not. You can't force people to fall back in love with you. But what you can do is never lose out on your individual worth. Never lose out on who you are. Never lose out on what you bring to the table. Never lose out on your values, your morals, and your ethics, because you got to understand this. You got to understand that can't nobody be happier for you than you can be for yourself. So what do I commit to then? If I can't just commit to the affections of love, what do I commit to? You got to commit to not, watch this, commit not to make decisions about the person you want. But I instead would suggest that you commit to making decisions based upon what you're not going to tolerate. When you start making decisions off of what you like and not decisions off of what you will not tolerate, you find yourself oftentimes in a position of a lifestyle of discomfort because you're always working to compromise. There's some things in a relationship that you got to learn to compromise on, but there's some things that you should not have to compromise on. Certain things that make you happy should not be compromised. And we have to stop being so thirsty to be linked up or joined up with somebody that we diminish those things or we suppress those things that really bring us true happiness. Because let me tell you, baby, a man or a woman will not bring you the total happiness that you think they will bring. What some relationships bring you is more headache than happiness. But when you know what you're not willing to accept, when you know what you're not willing to embrace, when you know what you're not willing to live with, let's start looking at those cancellation items, or as we call them, deal breakers, and start saying, you know what, this is a deal breaker. And because I see that upon your life, I'm not going to have to even put myself in a position where I got to commit to it. The question is, do you have any deal breakers? And if you don't have any deal breakers, that means that you're really open for anything and anybody. You don't really have a high level of expectations without having a certain level of deal breaking. Every person should have some degree of deal breaking, something that you don't stand for, that you will not allow, something that shows your morals, your values, your ethics, and even the things that you think about your very own self. Have some deal breakers. That's fine. And then look at your deal breakers and see how well does the individual who's approaching you, how well do they measure up to the things that are deal breakers in your life? And so it's very simple for you to understand if somebody really is committed to you. There's 6 things that I want to highlight out to you, and I'm going to close it for today. The first thing you got to understand when you know that the person really is committed to you, you know that they're committed because they portray you in a positive light. When they talk about you, it's positive. When they talk to you, it's positive. When they're discussing you in scenarios, it's positive. How is your friend? How is your spouse? How is your companion? How is your boo thing? How are they talking about you? How do they refer to other people about you? Is it always a corrective conversation when they're talking to somebody else about you? Because if it's always a corrective conversations to somebody else about you, maybe they're really not committed as much as they're trying to be more concerned about who you are and what you offer. The second thing that I say that you look for to know that a person is really committed to you is, do they speak to you in the we, or do they speak to you in the you? The we means, is it more inclusive in the conversation? Do they talk to you like, hey, it's us? Or do they talk to you as, hey, it's you? Because the truth is, we can all find something wrong with everything. The question is, are we finding something wrong with us, or are you just finding something wrong with me? And many people are not committed. And because they're not committed, they are really pointed because they want you to be something before they finally commit to you. And you got to learn how to erase that. Just get rid of people who want you to change in order for them to accept you. You got to find people who are willing to embrace who you are, because the truth is, most people don't change for people. I'm going to say that again. Rewind. Most people don't change for people. So when people are trying to get you to change, that's that you conversations. That's that pointed conversations. That's that I and that you with a lot of separation. Make sure that they're speaking to you from the we standpoint. The third thing that you know when you're talking about somebody really being committed to you, you find that they meet your needs and they seek to fulfill you. Man, somebody who really is committed is finding ways to apologize. We dealt with that a little earlier. It's finding ways also to meet your desires, to fulfill your life. Companionship and friendships should be a joy. It shouldn't be a burden. People who want to rock with you are those who should be looking to advance you. When they meet your needs, what they're really doing is advancing you. They're pushing you further down the street. And the reason why you want them to go further down the street, or they want you to go further down the street, is because it means that they got another place that you could take them. You could take them further down the street because of the fact that they're helping promote you to your next levels. The fourth thing is this: they are satisfied with you. They aren't trying to change you. When people don't like what they have, they look for other people that they would like. And so when people are always constantly trying to change you, that's a key indication that you ain't what they really, really want. And this is the season you got to make up in your mind that you're not going to just settle for somebody. You don't want to be tolerated. You want to be celebrated. So make sure that as we're walking in this thing called commitment, you're finding people who are not unhappy with who you are. I'm going to say that again. You want to find people who are not unhappy with who you are. You want to find people that are satisfied with you. Matter of fact, back in the day in the church, old church would say, I'm satisfied in Jesus. Hallelujah. Meaning that they weren't needing him to do nothing else. They was already satisfied with what he's done, satisfied with who he is. When you're talking about linking up with somebody, whether it be friendship, whether it be relationship, whether it be even in partnerships, whatever it is, make sure that the person is satisfied with who you are and they're not trying to change you. Here's the fifth thing. The fifth thing in knowing that the person really is committed to you is they don't pay attention to others. Man, don't be comparing me to nobody else. Like, it's one thing when you walking with somebody and their eyes keep turning, looking at everybody else. That's horrible. That's horrible. When they're always concerned with everybody else. If a person is really committed to you, they ain't really concerned about nobody else. The focus really is you. Last thing, final thing, when a person is committed to you, here's the best thing to me. They make sacrifices. When they're committed to you, they make sacrifices. The commitment says it won't always be comfortable, but it also says, but you're worth it. It ain't always convenient, but you know what? I go that extra mile for you because I'm committed to showing you how committed I am to you. And so I want you all to keep those things in mind, that people who are committed, it's much more than their words. It's also in their activities. It's in their actions. It's in their deeds. And a person that's really committed to you, man, they're going to make tremendous sacrifice because you know why? You matter. So today, I want you to remember that. Hey, commitment is something serious, but let's not be committed to something that is not committed to us. Let's not bury ourselves in relationships that don't really desire our presence. Let's make sure we're finding ourselves in places. And sometimes the best place for you to be is all by yourself, because you ought to rather be alone than to be miserable. Back in the day, they used to say, I could do bad all by myself. So commit yourselves to happiness. If you commit yourselves first to happiness, you won't have any problem committing to other things that you join in partnership with. Commit yourself to your very own happiness. And so that's our message for today. Let's be committed to commitment, but the commitment starts with you. It don't start with anybody else. Don't put that burden, that pressure, or that strain on anyone else. I need you first to be happy with you, because when a person is happy, they then give off a certain vibe of happiness to whoever they come into contact with. So search you, check on you, make sure that you are first happy with you. So now you can spread your happiness to somebody else. Listen, this has been a phenomenal first season. Our numbers have grown like crazy. I am so excited about all the things that have happened and all of the great comments that you all are giving to me. Thank you all for inboxing me. Thank you all for leaving messages. Thank you all for having chats with me. Thank you for sharing it with somebody else. Season 1 really has been one for the books. What have we talked about this season? Man, we started out by talking about faith. Did you get my text? You remember that? Talk about the fact of, hey, a lot of times we're asking questions, but the real question is, hey, did you find out what God said about it? That was a great series for me because it told me that sometimes I'm talking out of my emotions and I'm not listening to what God has already said to me. And then we got to those curious conversations. When we talk about those curious conversations, it really began to bless me because the curious conversations was talking really about prayer. How often we have all these questions we ask everybody else, but we don't even take time to ask God. And with that conversation, my prayer is that you decided to stop asking so many of your friends about stuff that they have no clue of how to respond to it, and start talking to God about it and asking God for directions and guidance on it. And then we start talking about how much the faith weighs, because, to have faith sounds very, very strong, sounds empowering. But the truth is, man, faith is heavy. It's a heavy load to carry, because you got to carry your belief until you see a result. That's always a challenging place to be. But then I think my favorite of all of those conversations for the first part of faith was wrapped in healing really hurts. Who said that healing doesn't hurt? Man, the scenario that we talked about, the illustration that we gave about how burn victims recover, and how there is such a screeching and a scratching of the skin, and how it really comes together. And it's so painful at the time, but it turns back around, and it's the necessary process for healing. It really opened my eyes to see that on your pathway to healing, sometimes it's going to get worse before it get better. Then we went over and talked about, relationships. And today was the conclusion of that one. Talking about, honey, I'm home. Man, how I can be in the house, but not present. Got to understand that we want to make sure that our castles are those that people come to and they desire to walk in, and not that they stomach to come home. So we talked about that. And then we went into in my feelings, because all of us have had that moment where we literally start getting our feelings. We get our feelings simply because we care a lot. We get our feelings because what we're talking about matters a lot. We got to understand that sometimes being in our feelings distorts what's the reality of what we're dealing with. And then we dealt with, I made a mistake. One of the hardest things for everybody is to bring an apology out. I made a mistake. If we just learn how to humble ourselves and admit our wrongs, how much further could we be in life? So I hope that you have enjoyed this whole first season. Truth is, we're getting ready to wrap up, but I'll be back literally in a few more weeks. It ain't a long pause. It's a very short pause. We're going to catch up on some broadcasts. We're going to reevaluate some things. We want to hear back from you more. We're going to even push harder to get even more individuals partner with us. What should you look for in season 2? We got guests coming. We're going to have some interesting conversations. We're talking about business. We're also talking about live shows. We got some great things, because we're seeing the energy that is coming out of this Unscripted podcast. So stay tuned. Tell somebody else. We're going to be back in a very short break. Season 2 is upon you. Until then, hold your head up high. Put a smile on your face. I don't know the rest of the words to that song, but that was Kurt Franklin. But I just want you to know, trouble won't last always. And that's a totally different song. I messed all that up on purpose. But guess what? It's unscripted. So everybody, tell somebody else. Join in for season 2. Go join my YouTube page right now. Click the bell button so you can get them downloads to know firsthand when season 2 starts out. I love y'all. Stay positive. Why? Because you matter. Take care.